They fought without shields, and they won. Those were the first words the Galactic War Council heard when the scout captain staggered into the chamber. His armor was scorched, his eyes wide, and his voice shook with something no one had ever heard from a Verlic officer before: fear. The galaxy's most feared predator was afraid. The council chamber, high above the neutral moon of Vakar, had witnessed centuries of war planning. It was a place where empires were toppled and species exterminated with a single vote. But never had it hosted a report like this of an unshielded, primitive race destroying an armed cruiser. The galaxy had no word for such madness. The humans did. They called it winning. 2 days earlier, the Verlic Empire intercepted a slow-moving vessel in the Outer Rim. Its hull was battered, patched with mismatched metals and old scars. No escort, no shields, no visible weapons. From the Verlic perspective, it was a gift from the stars, a helpless target ripe for the taking. The captain of the Verlic ship ordered an immediate approach. His crew prepared for a quick raid: board the vessel, take the resources, enslave the crew. They had done it 100 times before. It was supposed to be routine. It would never be routine again. The colony ship, as the humans called it, wasn't a warship at all. It carried settlers, farmers, engineers, families with children. And yet, when the Verlic fired a warning shot, expecting surrender, the humans didn't slow down. They didn't even change course. They accelerated. At first, the Verlic captain laughed. Primitive creatures charging an Imperial flagship. It was absurd. But the absurdity turned to chaos in seconds. The human vessel bore down on them at full speed. The Verlic shields shimmered in response, ready to repel energy weapons. But the humans didn't fire. They rammed. The collision was deafening. Metal screamed as the human ship's prow tore through the Verlic shield matrix like it wasn't. Even there, Verlic crew members staggered as alarms blared across the deck. Shields had never been designed to stop physical impact. The humans had turned their own weakness into a weapon. Before the captain could recover, the humans were already inside. No teleporters, no protective suits. They breached the hull manually, armed with cutting tools, welding torches, and explosives. Cobbled together from ship parts, the Verlic were bred for war. Their empire had crushed countless worlds, yet they had never fought an enemy like this. The humans didn't advance cautiously. They stormed forward, fearless, relentless. Even when shot, they kept moving, as if pain only made them faster. They fought in silence, no orders shouted, no hesitation in their movements. The captain's voice trembled as he told the council. They breathed our air, they ate our rations, they laughed. When we struck them, half the crew was incapacitated. In close quarters combat before reinforcements arrived, the humans weren't fighting for territory or plunder. They were fighting to destroy the enemy, no matter the cost. And when they were finally pushed back, they didn't run. They sabotaged the flagship's reactor core, sacrificing themselves to ensure the Verlic would fall with them. The resulting blast tore the flagship apart. No one could have survived that, or so they thought. Hours later, in the drifting debris field, Verlic search crews found him, a single human, clinging to a jagged piece of hull plating. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, his ribs cracked. He had no helmet, no oxygen supply. Somehow, he was still alive. They brought him aboard. Curious to see the face of such madness, the human's eyes fluttered open. He looked straight at the Verlic commander, lips curling into a faint smile. Blood stained his teeth. Then he whispered something in his own language. The translation came later, and the words spread through the Verlic fleet like wildfire. "Is that all you've got?" The chamber fell into uneasy silence as the captain finished his report. Some of the council delegates scoffed, dismissing the humans as suicidal primitives. But others knew what they were hearing. The Thrin ambassador, whose people had survived 3 extinction-level wars, leaned forward. "Do you not see? This is not recklessness. This is a weapon. A biological weapon, forged on a world that tried to kill them every day of their existence." The Verlic captain shook his head. "They have no shields, no advanced weaponry." And yet, he paused, jaw tightening as if the memory itself pained him. "And yet, they came for us." The council demanded more information. Where did they come from? How could such a species exist? The captain's reply was quiet. almost reluctant. They call their homeworld Earth. I've seen the reports now. It is a world of storms that can strip the flesh from your bones, lands that freeze solid in a single night, skies that burn with fire. Predators lurk in every shadow. Their history is nothing but war. He leaned forward, voice low. They are not fearless. They are used to fear. They have lived with it for millennia, and they have learned to master it. The alien delegates shifted uneasily, each imagining what it would mean for such a species to step into the wider galaxy. Empires had fallen to enemies far weaker than this. What would happen when the humans built ships to rival theirs? What would happen when they spread? Outside the chamber, beyond the neutral moon, human colony ships continued their slow, steady crawl through the darkness of space. They did not know the Council existed. They did not know the fear their name had already begun to inspire. And yet, in that room, among the most powerful beings in the galaxy, there was an unspoken understanding this was not the last time they would hear of humanity. It was only the beginning. The first battle was dismissed by some as a fluke, a strange, unlucky encounter, an outlier in the vast, predictable machinery of galactic war. But then the reports began to spread. They came from the far reaches of the Spiral Arman outpost on the icy moon of Relith, a trade convoy near the Jernith Belt, a patrol station orbiting the gas giant Mer. Each story was different, yet all shared the same impossible details. A Verlic scout ship disabled a human freighter's engines, expecting the crew to surrender. Instead, the humans vented their own atmosphere, flooding the cabin with hard vacuum, then leapt onto the enemy ship in the chaos without suits. They fought barehanded until the Verlic fled, leaving their own vessel behind. A Thrin raiding party cornered a human exploration craft in the asteroid belt of Maris Prime. The humans didn't attempt to escape. They didn't fire their meager weapons. Instead, they fired their engines at full burn, slingshotting themselves off a spinning asteroid and into the raider's hull. The Thrin captain later told his superiors, voice still shaking, it was as if they had decided that dying was just a different way of winning. Soon, the galaxy's communication relays carried rumors faster than light, whispers in the dockyards, nervous talk in the mess halls of warships. 3 words repeated again and again. The Deathworlders. It was the scientists who explained why. The Galactic Institute of Xenobiology assembled a panel to study human physiology and behavior. The findings were disturbing. Humans could survive in vacuum for up to 2 minutes, long enough to cross from one hull breach to another. Their bodies were dense, their bones built to withstand impacts that would shatter most species. They had redundant organs, layers of muscle, and a cardiovascular system evolved to keep them alive even when severely injured. Pain for them was not a deterrent, it was a signal, a message to adjust tactics, not to retreat. In some cases, injury seemed to make them more dangerous, as if survival itself became a challenge they refused to lose. And then there was their creativity. When cornered, humans didn't rely on protocol or training manuals. They improvised. A damaged oxygen tank became an explosive. A broken console became a blinding flash trap. A detached hull panel became a makeshift shield. One researcher summed it up in a single, chilling statement: humans fight like the universe has been trying to kill them since birth, because it has. Their homeworld, Earth, was reclassified by the Institute from a category for habitable to a Class 9 death world. Oceans filled with storms that could swallow cities. Continents with deserts that cooked the flesh. Jungles where every plant or animal was either venomous, carnivorous, or both. Ice that could entomb you in hours. Skies that hurled lightning with enough force to shatter rock. On most worlds, apex predators were solitary. On Earth, apex predators hunted in coordinated packs, and humans had once been prey to all of them. The result was a species forged not for comfort, but for endurance. They didn't just survive hardship, they expected it. As these reports circulated, alien fleets began altering their patrol routes to avoid human-occupied systems. Merchants quietly canceled trade runs near Earth's expanding colonies. Even pirate crews started declining contracts that mentioned human targets. Still, some refused to believe the danger. The Gruul Syndicate, known for their brutality, sent 3 ships to raid a human mining outpost on the barren moon of Brackens. Reach: the humans had no warships, no orbital defenses, only automated drills and cargo haulers. What the Grill failed to anticipate was what the humans would do with those drills and haulers. The miners stripped explosives from the drill charges and packed them into unmanned hauler shuttles. They launched the shuttles in a wide arc, then drift toward the Grill ships when the raiders ignored them, assuming they were abandoned. The miners triggered the charges remotely. 2 of the Grill ships were destroyed in seconds. The third fled, leaving behind its dead and wounded. The survivors told the same story the Verlic captain had told weeks earlier. Humans who smiled in battle. Humans who didn't fight for victory as others understood it, they fought to deny the enemy any satisfaction. This pattern repeated across the galaxy. A cargo vessel trapped in a gravity well turned its descent into a weapon, dragging the attacking ship into the same fatal plunge. A science team under siege on a barren asteroid used their own habitat dome as a pressure bomb. A lone human frigate, outnumbered 6 to 1, deliberately rammed the enemy flagship, tearing it open from bow to stern. Each new tale added to the legend: the Deathworlders, the unkillable ones, the species that treated death not as an end, but as an acceptable price for making sure their enemy went with them. Soon, the whispers reached even the most remote starports. Children of alien races told each other ghost stories about humans. Soldiers sharpened their blades at night, while pretending they weren't imagining human boarding parties tearing through the bulkheads. The Galactic Council convened again, this time with the atmosphere heavy and grim. The Verlic captain was there once more, his armor repaired but his expression unchanged. The Thrin ambassador sat in silence, claws tapping against the table. The scientific delegate from the Vrin hegemony presented the findings of the xenobiology panel. The council listened without interrupting. By the time the presentation ended, several delegates looked physically ill. The Vrin scientist concluded, "You are thinking of them as soldiers. That is your mistake. They are survivors. Every single one of them has been trained, since birth, to endure hostile environments and outwit predators. War is merely another environment to survive," the Verlic captain added. "And when they cannot survive, they ensure their killers don't either." The council fell into tense silence. No one wanted to be the first to suggest what was already forming in their minds, that perhaps, before humanity could spread too far, they should be contained. But even as those thoughts stirred, new reports kept coming in. Another mining station, another freighter, another warship ambushed in a way no one had anticipated. The humans were spreading faster than anyone expected, their colony ships drifting outward like seeds on a stellar wind. Each one carried settlers, yes, but each also carried the same spirit that had terrified the Verlic and the Grill. It was becoming clear to the galaxy's rulers that humanity was not an isolated problem. They were a rising force, a wildfire in the dark, and the galaxy was running out of time to decide what to do about them. The debates in the Galactic War Council stretched over days. Every delegate knew the risk of delay. The stories of humanity had become more than rumors. They were beginning to sound like prophecy, left unchecked. This species would spread, and no one could say where they might stop. On the 4th day, the decision was made. The vote was not unanimous. 3 voices refused, but the rest agreed. Humanity was to be contained, neutralized, eliminated if necessary. The official term was strategic pacification. The word everyone else heard was extermination. The plan was unprecedented in scale. A coalition fleet was assembled, drawing warships from 6 major powers. The Verlic contributed their cruisers, bristling with plasma cannons. The Thrin sent their fast-strike frigates, their hulls gleaming like predatory insects. Even the cautious Vrin hegemony dispatched their dreadnoughts, each a mobile fortress. In total, over 300 warships converged in the shadow of the Dead Star Rifos, where the assault would begin. Their target was New Carthage, the largest of the human colonies, a planet of oceans and jagged continents in the Tau Hera system. Intelligence reports claimed it housed over 2 million humans, along with orbital shipyards and defense platforms, most of them outdated, crude, and vastly inferior to galactic technology. That it was supposed to be swift, a show of overwhelming force to shatter any human hope of resistance. The fleet translated into Tau Hera space in a flash of warp gate light. Sensors immediately lit up with human contacts, hundreds of ships scattered across the system. But something was wrong. Most were civilian craft, mining haulers, cargo freighters, even fishing vessels, not warships. The Verlic commander issued the standard surrender broadcast. Humans of New Carthage, you are ordered to power down your vessels and submit to inspection. Any resistance will result in your immediate destruction. There was no reply. Instead, the human ships began to move, not toward the planet for shelter but toward the fleet. The Verlic assumed it was panic. The Thryn called it desperation. The Vryn thought it was some kind of bluff. All three theories died the moment the first human ship slammed into a Verlic cruiser at full burn. Its cargo hold stuffed with raw mining explosives. The blast vaporized both ships. The humans hadn't come to surrender. They'd come to fight using anything they had. A fishing trawler weaved between the Thryn frigates, releasing a cloud of jagged metal scrap into their path. The debris shredded the frigate's maneuvering thrusters, leaving them spinning helplessly. Moments later, a civilian fuel tanker detonated itself in their midst, consuming both ships in a fireball. The coalition fleet returned fire, and human ships died by the dozen. But for every one destroyed, another seemed to appear, darting in close, taking impossible risks. The humans used the wreckage of their own fallen as shields, hiding behind tumbling hulks until they were close enough to strike. Above New Carthage, the real surprise awaited. The orbital defense platforms, once dismissed as antiques, opened fire. Their weapons were ballistic slugs of dense metal fired at incredible speed. Two modern warships used deflecting energy beams. They were an afterthought until those slugs punched straight through shield emitters and tore into armored hulls. On the planet's surface, humans had been watching the battle unfold, and they had prepared something the Coalition had never faced. From the oceans rose massive, submersible carriers, ancient human war relics repurposed for space combat. They launched swarms of jury-rigged fighter craft, small, fast, and nearly invisible to targeting sensors. The fighters didn't carry standard munitions. Instead, they carried scavenged industrial tools, magnetic clamps, and cutting torches. They didn't engage in dogfights. They went for the enemy's engines. Within the first hour, over 30 Coalition ships had lost propulsion, drifting helplessly as human boarding teams swarmed their hulls. The Thryn frigates fared worse. Designed for speed, they had little in the way of close-quarters defenses. Once boarded, they were death traps for their own crews. The Verlic commander, watching the chaos unfold, ordered the fleet to concentrate fire on the planet itself. If they could not win in orbit, they would burn New Carthage from the sky. The order was never carried out. The humans had one last trick, and it was the kind only they would dare. Hidden deep within the planet's shipyards were three massive freighters, old, slow, and loaded with jump drives salvaged from every wreck the humans had ever found. They had been modified into single-use weapons. When the Coalition fleet moved into bombardment position, the freighters jumped, not away, into the fleet. The sudden mass displacement was catastrophic. A Verlic cruiser and a Vryn dreadnought collided at near-light speeds, both vaporizing instantly. Shockwaves of plasma and debris ripped through the formation. The Coalition fleet's careful formation shattered in seconds. In the confusion, the humans struck again, hitting isolated ships with swarms of gunboats and boarding parties. Coalition losses mounted rapidly, and for every alien who fought bravely, there were two who broke, their ships retreating in disorder. By the fourth hour of battle, the Verlic flagship's shields were gone. Human fighters clung to its hull like insects, cutting into weapon ports and airlocks. The flagship's commander, once so confident in victory, ordered a full retreat. The retreat turned into a rout. Ships fled in all directions, abandoning crippled allies and leaving behind burning wrecks. Of the original 300 warships, fewer than half escaped Tau aerospace. From the bridge of a battered human corvette, a young captain watched the enemy vanish into faster-than-light jumps. His ship had no shields, half its weapons were gone, and the life support systems were failing. But he was smiling. The battle was over. Humanity had won, not because they were stronger or faster or better armed, but because they refused to accept defeat. In the War Council chamber days later, the The surviving coalition commanders could barely meet each other's eyes. They had brought the galaxy's most powerful fleet to crush a species, barely a century into spaceflight, and they had been driven off humiliated, terrified. The Verlet captain, who had once been the loudest voice for extermination, now said nothing. The Thrin ambassador, who had warned of humanity's nature, sat in grim silence. The Vrin scientist finally spoke. We thought we were fighting a lesser foe. Instead, we fought an echo of every predator they ever faced. And they are not done. Somewhere, in the dark between stars, the humans were already rebuilding. And the galaxy now understood the truth: there was no containing a Deathworlder. The war was over before it ever truly began. The Coalition's greatest fleet had been broken, scattered to the winds by a species still patching their ships with scavenged steel. And yet, somehow, everyone in the galaxy understood this was not the end of the conflict. It was the beginning of a new era. I was there in the council chamber when the survivors returned. I remember their faces, pale and drawn, their voices low as they recounted the battle. These were veterans of centuries of war, leaders who had burned worlds to ash without hesitation. And now, they spoke of humanity as if speaking of a natural disaster, something you could not reason with, something you could only hope to avoid. There were no boasts, no claims of eventual victory, only silence. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed in subtle ways. Merchant routes were redrawn to skirt human-occupied systems. Military patrols that once swept boldly through the frontier now gave wide berth to any planet-flying Earths. Flag pirates, once eager for the easy prey of young colonies, quietly removed humans from their target lists. Even the language shifted. The word Deathworlder no longer needed explanation. It was enough to say it, and everyone would understand. I found myself thinking about what the Vrin scientist had said before the battle, that humans were not soldiers, but survivors. I had thought it an overstatement, a poetic exaggeration. Now, I understood. Every species in the council chamber had evolved to fit their worlds. The Thrin were hunters, swift and precise. The Verlik were predators, built for domination. The Vrin were thinkers, strategists, masters of patience. Humans were something else entirely. They had not been born into a world that welcomed them. They had been forged in a crucible of storms and famine, hunted by creatures faster, stronger, and more deadly than themselves. Every day of their history had been a struggle to live until the next, and in that endless struggle, they had learned a truth the rest of us had forgotten. Victory does not belong to the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most intelligent. It belongs to those who refuse to stop fighting. We had thought our technology, our numbers, our experience would crush them before they could take root in the stars. Instead, we had shown them their own power. We had taught them that they could face the galaxy's greatest fleets and survive. Now, there's talk of diplomacy, trade agreements, boundaries to avoid conflict. But deep down, everyone knows those boundaries will shift, and the humans will keep moving outward. One colony at a time. You can no more contain them than you can hold back the tide. Some in the council still hope to find a way to destroy them before they grow too strong. I know better. The humans will not stop. They will endure every blow, every loss, every setback, and turn each one into another reason to fight harder. One day, they will not just be another race among the stars. They will be a force that shapes them, and the rest of us will live in a galaxy that has been remade in their image. When I think back to the first report, the Verlet captain's voice breaking as he said, "They fought without shields, and they won," I realize now that it was more than just the account of a single battle. It was the first line in a history that is still being written. They weren't the strongest, they weren't the fastest, they weren't the smartest, but they were the most dangerous thing we had ever seen because they refused to die. And that was the day humanity terrified the galaxy. If you enjoyed this story of the Deathworlders, make sure you hit that like button. It tells me you want more of these epic HFY tales. Drop a comment below. What's your favorite humans or special moment in sci-fi? I read every single one. And if you're new here, subscribe and join us as we explore more stories where humanity stands against impossible odds and wins. Because in this galaxy, it's never just about strength, it's about refusing to die.